Hello, everybody. My name is Gabrielle. I'm your host today on this fabulous show that is Hot Topics. Let me tell you what this show is about. This is the show where we like to have real talk about real things. We like to focus on things in education, employment, physical health, mental health, or anything else that is steamy. We like to have those conversations that you only talk about with your friends. But we're going to take all that and put that all out in the open. But this is not a gossip show. This is an educational show. This is educational programming, right? But basically, we like to have real talk about things that are happening in our lives that we may not even think about. And we like to have an open dialogue about that. So today is no different. So I'm excited about today because today is a repeat topic. Excuse me. I love it when I have repeat topics. I love it when I have repeat guests. My guest today is not a repeat. This is his first time on Hot Topics, but this is a repeat topic. And this is the fourth time that I'm bringing back this topic. And the topic is, what is a podcast? I have been talking to various people about podcasting. I am exploring this. I've been a podcaster for a year now. I'm still figuring this out. so, so I'm going to continue this exploration about podcasting and what it's all about. And I'm bringing you all with me. So, with that said, I have a guest with me who is going to sit on the hot seat, and he is going to talk about podcasting and what it's all about and his journey and yada yada yada. So, let me tell you about him. So, my guest, his name is Julius Hinton, and I'm going to tell you about him. So, let me tell you about him. Who is Julius Hinton? Let me tell you who he is. So Julius Hinton, aka producer underscore Julius, is the founder of the Plug Agency and Network and co-owner of Life is Dope LLC. Julius is an award-winning podcast producer who develops, produces, edits, markets, and monetizes podcasts and multimedia content. He has over 10 years of experience creating podcasts and has edited and produced over 500 podcast episodes with many high profile guests. And his company, and this is about his company, the Plug Agency. I'll just tell you about that. It has been led by award-winning podcasters and influencers. The Plug Podcast Agency is a group of passionate content creators who decided to put their knowledgeable passion for podcasting and digital media together to help those looking to add more value to their marketing techniques and overall digital presence. They're experts, so relax. Let them connect the dots to the hashtag power of podcasting. Fabulous. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to bring Julius Hinton to the stage.
Hello,
Hi,
hello.
Julius. How are you doing today?
I'm toasty. I'm nice and toasty on the hot seat. I'm ready to talk
Ah,
to your audience. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited for today.
awesome. So, yeah, let's talk about podcasting. It seems to be this thing that's blowing up, and let's get right to it. Let's dig deep into it. So, I asked my previous guest, but we'll keeping up with tradition. I'll just ask you. Let's start with the most basic question. What is it? What is a podcast?
Yeah. So a podcast, to the technical term, is a audio digital file that's downloadable or streamed now, thanks to Spotify and some other people. But essentially, it's just focused on the audio experience of content. Going back to the essence of talk radio. As radio and things kind of just moved into the new century, podcasts found their niche as far as putting that information out online versus out on radio signals. But for me, podcasting really is an exercise of your First Amendment, your freedom of speech. It's basically digitizing and securing that. Um, it's really huge to me as far as the accessibility and empowering voices who are unheard. And a lot of time with media, it's kind of a hierarchy that you have to climb to get your voice heard or to actually broadcast your perspective. And podcasting is the absolute opposite of that. It's open to the public. Anybody can do it. A lot of times it's free to even publish your podcast, but it's really just the empowerment and the exercising of your First Amendment to me.
Hmm. Interesting. The exercising your First Amendment. We haven't been doing that already.
We have through freedom of press, but I don't think it's been to me the people. Again, when you go to media, you're going to have to go to journalism school. You're going to have to get the big job, and even then, you're having to produce stories from the network perspective, not necessarily your perspective. So, at what point do you get your 15 minutes of shine, and how do you really exercise and amplify that? And I think to me, that's really what your freedom of speech is, right? Your chance to say whatever you want to say, come off the cuff, speak with your chest, and speak from the heart. But to do it freely, that arena, that platform didn't really exist until podcasts came around.
Hmm. So how long has podcasting been around? It just, I don't know. To me, it just kind of popped up maybe in the past, 5 or 10 years. I don't know if you can shine some light on that.
Absolutely. Yes, I've been doing podcasting for over 10 years, about 12 years now. And back in the day, it was an online radio show that we streamed online. And then we would obviously, take that audio file, publish it on our website, and for people to download and, to enjoy. Even back then in 2010, 2011, 12, in the very early days, you were able to take those audio files and publish them straight to iTunes, just like there were a music file or an album. So essentially, those were podcasts back then, but the podcast industry wasn't official to 2017. They're recognized by the Interactive Advertising Bureau, the IAB. That's when they first, were established by advertising, giants as a viable and official medium of, advertising and entertainment. And so since 2017, it's been an industry, and literally since every year since 2017, listenership has grown, revenue and advertising has grown, the amount of podcasts people are producing has grown. So the entire industry is just blowing up. What I like to kind of compare it to is like the early days of TV. Some people barely had a TV set, and some people were barely watching some TV shows. But obviously, as the decades went on, everybody's on TV. It's just another medium like TV, radio, movies, you name it. It's just another form of media, another form ultimately of communication.
Hmm. So maybe you can answer this for me because I asked my previous guest this. Since we have this new form of media, is it replacing our current forms of media? Um, is it replacing TV? Is it replacing radio? Is it replacing, well, not streaming like Netflix, but is it replacing our current media?
So yes and no. If you're working in the radio industry, I would definitely say yes. You're probably feeling the pressure. You're probably seeing the shift. I know a lot of the radio stations are actually actively trying to build podcast networks and really kind of add to their portfolios with a podcast arm, which obviously is great due to talk radio and everything on the decline. But um, at the end of the day, I don't necessarily think it's replacing anything. I think it's adding to. And what I think it's adding to is the conversation. Um, all these different platforms, whether you're on TV, whether you're on radio, whether it's a movie, usually there's a conversation that's being had. How that story or how that conversation is being shared is different. And I think podcasts are just another way. And as humans, especially me, like as you're busy driving from two and two, working out, walking here, doing what to what, it's really hard to stop and stare at a screen. And even with radio, I'm not in my car half the day, right? So it's hard to really, reach people where they're at. And we all know that we're on our cell phones. So we see social media blowing up because we know people are there. but we also know podcasts are blowing up because it's reaching people where they're at, and that's in their hand, in their phone, but also on their TVs now. You see people like Kevin Hart having his huge show on Peacock, and it's like that's a podcast. They're just changing the format, filming it, and putting it on TV. But depending on your perspective, depending on your experience, I think that's what you should call it. If I'm watching TV, it's TV. If I turn around and I'm not watching TV at all, and I'm in the kitchen working on dinner, then that's a podcast because I'm just listening to it. So it just matters how you're doing it.
So now that leads me to the next question. I know there's audio podcasts, and then there's video as well. So
Yeah.
I guess what form do podcasts come in? There's a debate about whether if you put it on YouTube, is it still a podcast because it's a video, or is it just strictly audio? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. It's a very interesting time too. Even as internally at the Plug Network, we're shifting to a lot of video, and that's mainly because of with social media and what the people obviously want. People want to watch video; they want to see it. But to me, I think where the difference is really with the platforms. Like a lot of people don't know this, but you can have videos on Apple Podcast. I don't know how to do it. I don't know who you have to talk to. If you're watching this, please contact me. But there's some magic buttons that you can push that a couple networks have where you can publish your video podcast on Apple Podcasts. And to me, I think it's all about meeting the people where they're at. If I'm in Spotify and I'm watching a video podcast, I don't see too much of a difference. But again, I take it all the way back to that experience as a listener or as a fan. Do I have time to watch the Spotify video? Well, if I have that same time to watch Spotify, I might watch YouTube. I might watch, one of these streaming platforms, Paramount, whatever it is. But if I'm listening to something, it's just a different mindset, different psychology that I'm in, just like when I'm listening to an audiobook. So I know, just to throw some statistics out there, the reason why people listen to podcasts is 74% of people listen to podcasts simply for educational purposes. So they're in there to learn something. They're receptive. They're like sponges. They're hoping something splashes and makes sense to them. Versus if I'm watching something, I might be distracted. Right? There's other things that are coming on. It's a little bit more noisier of an environment than it is audio. Audio is just my ears and my brain. There's really nothing going in between that besides the theater of the mind. But with video, there's other things that can kind of jump in front of me, right? That can interrupt that experience. So hopefully that answers your question.
Hmm. Well, I mean, I've heard the term, web series. So I guess my understanding is a podcast really is an overall term, and then there's a bunch of sub definitions of a podcast. Is that fair to say?
Very fair to say. Yeah. And I think, it's not either one. I think it's really all. I think creators should give themselves the credit for doing both. Like, you're doing both. You're doing audio and you're doing video. It takes completely different work to publish an audio podcast than it does to, chop your video up and publish this on YouTube, Facebook, and the various platforms. So I think, as a creator and as people respecting creators, you should understand that I have a podcast and I have a web series, and the work that it takes to create both.
All right, all right, all right. So I don't know. To me, it seems like everybody has a podcast nowadays. Um, so is it getting to the point that it's really annoying, and well? Let me ask in a different way. Should anybody start a podcast?
Short answer, absolutely. I think everybody has a story to tell. I think everybody's life story is worth hearing. So I'm very biased to that. Absolutely. I think everybody should start a podcast. Now, with that, I think everybody should think very intently about why they're starting that podcast. And I think that's where a lot of the noisy or the disorganization of the podcast industry comes in. Everybody wants to start a podcast about nothing, but podcasting works when it's very intentional, when you're trying to build a community or a tribe around a certain message or movement or a vibe. And I think that's why everybody can start a podcast, because everybody has a vibe, everybody has their own imprint that they're leaving on the world. But at the same time, how deep is that thought? And that's really where I like to come in with creators is, hey, you want to start a podcast? I get that you're passionate. What are you going to do when episode 22 comes out, when you've, talked about this topic every way that you can possibly think? How are you going to grow the show? How are you going to, amplify this message? And that's where I kind of come into the business side of podcasting. I equate the same as the two. If you start a podcast, you just started a business, and you should definitely operate your podcast as if it's such.
Hmm. Okay. So so you're saying when it comes to podcasting, we should treat it like a business. Like we should have a name for it, have social media pages and phone number, business cards, and constant marketing. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that. I'm saying take it a step further. Like, no, my company, Life is Dope, I think is a perfect example because it was spawned from a podcast. But from the popularity of the podcast, we went and started an LLC from the company so we can, legally and officially work with sponsors, in a legal capacity, not just taking money under the table, which I think a lot of podcasters do. They deposit the money into their friend's account, and their friend distributes the money. Like, I think, again, treat it completely separate. Start a business account, start a bank account for the podcast. We went a step further, and we trademarked Life is Dope. So, we have a U.S. trademark over it. And I think, again, that's how you should think about it. Nike didn't just start Nike and not think about how to trademark, the term Nike or what the brand would look like in 20 years. You should totally think about that with your podcast. And just to kind of add a little, another nugget on top of it, even if you're not thinking like it's a business and I want to, go into this big thing, if it's just a passion project, think about who you're doing it for and why you're doing it. One thing I like to tell people is, if you could listen to your great grandfather's podcast and he's, 33 years old and he's telling you how he sees the world and what he's going through and, the ins and outs, would you listen to that right now? Of course you would. So, that's the opportunity that we have right now, is to leave this digital imprint, for generations, eons. So take this opportunity to tell your story, start the story, capture the story. If it's, going backwards and talking to, the older folks in the generation, I can really come up with a million reasons why you should start a podcast, but on a top level, capture your story and digitize it.
Hmm. Interesting. So now is another question. You said before about when a lot of people start podcasts and they want to talk about nothing. So do you think we should have a niche for a podcast? Should there be a specific direction, a specific goal, or uh, can we talk about anything? Can we just talk about our lives, or complain, or just go on a tirade? Like what? How should we take a direction of a podcast?
It's a great question. I think really focus on, again, who you're doing it for. I always say when you're making content for one person. That one person is the message that you're trying to reach it to. And that's the same thing with your podcast. And that could be internal. It could be a conversation, with the mirror. I have a client, Precursor, and she captures her entrepreneur journey. And, she's going through the ins and outs, and she's some points literally talking to herself about how she sees things. And we get to be a fly on the wall to, experience that. So I would just take it back to, what's that message for? If it is, a niche topic that you're, trying to dive into, which is what I would suggest, totally kind of drill into it. Who is that person listening to it? Who's that person that, if it's music or if it's a type of brand, who goes to those places, who buys that type of product? What is that environment that you're speaking on? And then really try to dig into the details of that. The details are what's going to fuel your podcast.
Hmm. So it's not like, hey, I just want my friend and I, we're just going to talk about like celebrities, or we're just going to make jokes, or it's just for my friend and I to talk about nonsense. So, or something like that. Or should it be, this is to reach out to somebody. Like I want, what am I trying to say? I got to put my words together.
That's all right.
So if it's just like two friends riffing off of each other as a that's one type of podcast, or should it be more of there should be a goal, there should be a direction, you should impact somebody or try to change something? I don't know if that
I
makes
got
sense.
you. Yeah, I totally got you. I mean, I would say one both, but it's about how you're impacting. So if it's just like, me and my best friend, we're just kind of BS and starting a podcast. Well, who are my other friends that would want to be in the room at that moment? Who are those people that would laugh at these jokes? What do they look like? Where do they go? Are they at the hockey game? Are they at the baseball game? Do they not like sports? Really going into that listener profile, I would say. And then that would kind of help you build that tribe. But you got to keep that in mind. This isn't a private conversation that you're having with just you and your best friend. If you wanted to do that, I don't think a podcast is necessarily the right vehicle for that. Although you can create private links to your podcast, so you can choose who listens to it if that's something that you would want to do, like if you're a lawyer, doctor, something like that. But again, I think it's really just the arena to practice your freedom of speech, to really go into full detail about what you're passionate about. Whether that is just BS and talking about celebrities, or if that's going really deep into podcasting, like for instance for me.
Hmm. So now going back to treating the podcast like a business, some people have websites just for their podcast. So is that too much, a website?
It can be. Again, I think it all goes back to your purpose of why you're starting that podcast. If there's a what I call business development arm attached to it, if you're trying to grow a message, bring in traffic to your website or to your products, then absolutely, start that website specifically to build your audience. Otherwise, you're splicing your audience to these other platforms who are, in a nutshell, turning around and selling that right back to you. The Spotify's, the iHeartRadios of the world, these guys know who your audience is. And if you actually want to reach them, then they're saying, hey, buy some advertisement. Well, the flip side to that would be to start your own website. That way you can do essentially the same things, but to, track who your audience is and have a direct way to reach them. But I would say on the flip side of that coin, you don't really need to. Your podcast is taking up that void for you. A lot of times what people want is just a link to your podcast. And you can send them one from Spotify, Apple, Amazon Music. There's a plethora of podcast platforms that you can distribute your podcast to, your audio file to. And I would just simply use those, build your brand presence with those and save yourself some time and some effort and money.
Hmm. All right. So okay. So do you have your own podcast, or you just produce other podcasts?
So currently, I'm not producing my own podcast. I have before. So I used to do Mile High Mentors with Connor Doobie, and I was producer and co-host of that podcast. Same kind of thing with Life is Dope. But right now, I just find myself empowering my creators. So I'm the owner of the Plug Network. We have 12 different shows on the network, and so right now I'm just helping those guys produce their shows, develop their shows, market their shows, monetize their shows, basically wherever we can connect. And I feel the void of just really helping these creators get their message out there, because I know this is what the people want to hear. It's refreshing content. We're not talking about the everyday news headline. These people have different perspectives, and they're coming from places that you probably haven't, well, you probably heard of them, but you probably haven't stopped and talked with a lot of the people from these areas. So this is a great chance to just kind of get that refreshing opinion. Like I said, we got real people talking about real things.
So what is it like? What is podcasting giving to us that radio is not giving, that television is not giving? What is it about why is podcasting so special?
Perfect question. So the number one thing is accessibility. That's why radio is on the decline, and again, podcasting is just going through the roof. Is everybody's on their phones, and even if you're in your car, I don't know about you, but the radio in Colorado is terrible. It's whack. It's horrible. Hip hop stations, everything. It's horrible. So I don't spend time doing that. I'm going to plug my phone in, aux cord guys. You're going to plug your phone in, and then at that point, you're listening to either a streaming platform, or for me, which is simple, it's just a podcast. I turn on an episode, and by the time I get from A to B, I've probably learned something really deep and tangible about whatever journey I'm on at the time, whether it's a therapy kind of mental health thing, whether it's business, sports, whatever. I can dive deep into that topic, learn something or experience something I didn't experience before, and enjoy that on the go. But with the other platforms, I think they're really constrained by advertisement, which again I think was another reason why podcast is on the rise. Um, with radio, every top of the hour you got to come out with your calls, your station IDs, your tags, and whatnot. TV, you got to pay your advertisers, so it's always a 27-minute program, never a 30, because you got to get that ads in, and it might be even less than that, right? So it just depends on the medium. But with podcasting, one, whatever the advertiser wants to do with my podcast does not affect my content. I can make it however long I want. I can tell the advertiser where I want them to, plug themselves in for the podcast. They don't necessarily get to decide that, depending on how you're set up. That's how we're set up over here. Um, but again, it really just depends on the control aspect that the creator has. I think that'd probably be my third probably bullet point of why podcasting is just really on the rise compared to some of these other traditional mediums is everyday people can't jump on TV. Everyday people can't jump on the radio or do a movie or any of these other things, but they can jump on social media and they can create a podcast. So they can create that content, they can get their voice out. And that's why you're just seeing, a rise to me of the people really trying to tell their stories and not so much of what the networks and what the executives want to tell us.
Well, to push back against that, I mean, if it's just convenience, I mean, you have all these streaming platforms. You have Hulu, Netflix. There's a couple others. It's not coming to me. Amazon. All those are that's TV on your phone, on your laptop. So why not just get all of your information from all these streaming platforms? What is it about?
Mm.
And again, what is so special about podcasting that we're not getting from regular streaming?
Got it. I got it. So the number one thing is the intimate listening relationship. That's what you're not getting from any other medium. Even like you said, Amazon. Actually, I got a stat right here that just came out today. iHeartRadio, iHeartRadio's podcast revenue is up 60% from year to year, quarter to quarter, or year to year on the exact quarter. And they made $86 million just last quarter from podcast revenue. And I think the reason why is the intimate listening creates higher conversion rates for the advertiser and for anybody marketing to podcast listeners. As a podcast listener, it's easier to focus on the messages that I'm hearing. I'm not being distracted with, 15 commercials in an ad break. Even when I stream Amazon, if I'm watching in between episodes, there's an ad that rolls in, But with podcasting, one, I'm choosing that intimate relationship so they know that the listener has a deeper buy-in. And then secondly, there's really nothing as far as other ads creating that noisy environment. So that listener can convert higher. That gets brands investing more. Obviously, people like iHeartRadio, Amazon, others, they're making huge profits off of this. So it just makes sense to provide this other medium for people who are just too busy, like I said, to sit down and watch whatever's on Amazon. But if they know they got one of our podcasts on Amazon, hey, they can click play and they can go for that walk and not miss anything and still learn and and still go about their day to day.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think in my, I guess, in my journey into podcasting, I discovered it's more personalized. Like I've done, episodes on on homeschooling and resiliency and living with disabilities. Like you're not going to see this stuff on TV. You're not going to,
Exactly.
you're not going to see it on streaming or it's the lives of people and what's going on with them. It's going to be very controlled, and it's highly paid actors saying this stuff as opposed to someone who may be broke. So I think it's
Seriously.
more it's more personalized, and it's things that people don't really want to talk about. um So let's talk about race a little bit. So
Yeah.
do you think like podcasting, is it, do you think it's amplifying, because you're in the BIPOC group, right? So, or you're one of the admin? Is that how that works? Are you one of the admin?
No, I'm just a member of the BIPOC group. So shout out to Tangia and Maribel. Just work closely with them, especially Tangia. We go way back. She was one of my neighbors, so it's been really full circle to really collaborate with her with the BIPOC group. But no, just a member, just like everybody else. But love the community that they're building, and just a big fan and trying to wave their flag as much as I can.
Ah, of course, of course. So now, do you think that podcasting is amplifying the voices of Black people, of Asians, of of Latinos, of is, do you think it's amplifying the voices of people of color? Is it solving racism? Is it, it's a, I think it's two different questions I'm asking. So question number one, do you think that podcasting, is it amplifying the voices of people of color?
Yes, I think podcasting is definitely amplifying voices of color, especially Black people, for a number of different reasons. I mean, number one, I would say is accessibility. I don't know if it's solving racism, but at the same time, accessibility that racism didn't create has been huge in telling us the stories that we've seen on TV, we've heard on radio, we're reading about in the paper. There wasn't the Black writer, there wasn't a Black director to tell our perspective. And I think podcasting again is totally just smashing down those walls and creating stars like you see Gilly the Kid, for instance, Van Lathan, Deion Sanders. These are people like who walked away from TV or left TV because, for lack of better terms, they weren't able to be Black enough. They weren't able to just come out with their message, be with their culture, speak from the cuff, speak with their chest the way that they really wanted to feel. And if they did, well, they got the network perspective pushback. And so with podcasting, you don't get that because you as a creator are totally in control of your platform or your business, your brand, however you see it. And I think that's one way that we're totally amplifying our voices. Secondly, I think it's the stories. So there tends to be, the diversity, equity, inclusion efforts usually end up telling a certain story, in my opinion. Ends up being, the coming of age. Hey, I'm broke and I found some resources, and hey, now I'm on top again, right? Well, there's other stories to that. Why can't we just tell stories of happy Black people or Black people healing, or like life is dope. Just every day being dope, just talking about dope conversations that are going on in your community without it being, that perspective thrown on top of it. So I think podcasting just again gives people that power, that accessibility to tell their own stories, and down to the essence of people, we're storytellers, but especially Black people, going back to our roots. I had a minor in African American studies from Metro State, and I just learned about how much Black people were orators. We told our stories. We didn't really have the means to write them down, but we passed on these stories from generation to generation around campfires and dinner tables and whatnot. And that's how we tell our stories. That's how we grow. That's how we learn, is through the conversation and through storytelling. And again, podcasting just amplifies that up and puts no limits on it because again, we're exercising our freedom of speech.
Mm. So you're saying it doesn't solve racism?
Nope, does not solve racism. You did not get that from me. Uh, but you know what? It does start the conversation to solve racism, which I think TV won't do. You see, they're only going to do it for 2020, or when the timing is right. Radio, that message is there depending on the network perspective. All the other mediums are basically controlled, while podcasting is going to give us that opportunity to at least have the conversation to get to a better place.
Mm. All right, all right, all right. So this one I want to make sure we get in. So you talked about, you monetize podcasts. So how do
Yeah.
you do that? How does that work? I'm trying to get rich. So what do I got to do?
You need to market your podcast as much as possible, which that's going to lead me down a conundrum. And I promised I wouldn't curse on your podcast, so I'm not going to go there. But these social media platforms are really controlling how, frankly, how we're talking to each other. It's almost impossible now to market your content unless it's a certain way. You know, Instagram went from Instagram to TikTok, and TikTok's still in China, so you don't even know what audience you're really reaching, and all these numbers are just impressions. You don't know. So at the bottom line, it's marketing your podcast to people, getting people interested in what your movement is, what your message is, and ways to do that obviously are through content. Um, video content, audio content, just producing your episodes consistently. But the number one way to market your show is to get more listeners. I hate to be that guy, but the more listeners you have, the easier it is to go into those conversations. The more leverage you have with these brands and podcasters, or brands and advertisers, and it just really kind of resets the conversation. But there is a new thing happening I wanted to share with you on this for us other podcasters who aren't reaching the 5,000, 10,000, whatever amount of downloads that these brands are looking for. Affiliate marketing or affiliate campaigns are really going through the roof. And these are, different campaigns that you can set up directly from a brand's website. Essentially, what you're doing is creating a unique URL or a unique link that goes directly back to you. And then you promote this link on your podcast, throw it in your show notes. And when listeners, hear about it and they actually like the product you're promoting and they want to go buy it, well, they're going to go buy it directly from you. You get a percentage of that buy. And a lot of podcasters are moving this way just because there's more bang for the buck. Again, I promise not to curse, but a lot of advertisers are finding ways to just cut the creator short. They don't want to pay the creator what they're worth. They're trying to, get a revenue. And I don't blame them, right? They're trying to turn a profit, but they're trying to turn that profit off the creator's back. And by paying them less with CPM impressions, CPM means cost per mile. So amount of downloads you get per 1,000 is what they'll pay you. And this is a formula that they like to try to make an industry standard. So essentially, hey, you have 25 CPM. If you get 1,000 downloads with my ad in there, I'll pay you $25. That's not fair. I know how hard it takes to get 1,000 downloads. I know how hard it is to create a podcast and a podcast spot. There's people out there who are taking advantage of it, and great for them. But for me as a creator or wearing my creator hat, I just don't feel comfortable, selling my audience for that low. So the flip side to do that would be affiliate marketing. That way, everybody wins. You get paid when there's a win.
So what are your thoughts on getting sponsors, advertisements, all that stuff?
I think it's great. I think it's going to be more consistent and more of a industry normal as the podcast industry moves forward. I mean, again, we're only 5 years into this. Podcasting came out 2017, so we're very early in the podcast space still. But I think as the market gets a little bit noisier, more brands are coming into the podcast space every day, every week, and I think the flip side of that is going to be brands trying to partner more closely with the actual podcaster. We're starting to see this already with some social media integrations. Like, people want to be on the podcast, and then they want you to be a brand ambassador, and they want you to, promote them on social media. They want the full ecosystem of the creator. And I think that's going to be more of an industry norm, more so than just kind of trying to slap my ad in there. We're already kind of seeing it, but the conversion rates are obviously going to be higher if the host of that podcast is running an ad, saying your brand, versus you getting a voice actor, getting John, Joe, whoever the hell coming in and reading the ad. That listener saying, "Hey, who's this? I don't, I'm not sure who Progressive is or who Flow is, but I know who Gabrielle is, and I'm going to listen to her if she tells me to go to this insurance company." And I think a lot of brands are going to see that shift, feeling that shift already. But I think it's just that conversation about how to leverage each other.
Okay. So now, do you think podcasting is can it be a full-time job? Can someone not full-time job as in hours, but full-time job as in money, right? Do you think someone can live off of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a walking example, I guess. I've been doing podcasting full time now for almost 3 years. So I've been a blessing to do so. But I think absolutely each podcast to me takes at least 3 to 4 teammates to really create it. Obviously, you got to have the talent, the host, one or two, depending on the show format. You need a producer, somebody who can just handle the technical side of things. And then if you're doing video, you definitely want a videographer involved, or just somebody whose sole job is to focus on video. Or maybe you have to invest in a place like this that does both. But video and audio is huge, so you really want to have that conversation internally. But essentially, you're going to have the production team, you're going to have a marketing team, and at the back end, you're going to have a sales team. And I think the perfect example of this is just radio. Podcasts are not that different from radio. It's just how the listener is being reached, or how's the listener accessing the content. So, but you see this with radio shows, especially the top ones. They have a full marketing department, a full production department, a full sales team. And I think that's more where podcasts are going to shift from. And again, that's 4 or 5 full-time jobs. To take it back to why it should be a full-time job is, this is your central piece of content. From podcasting, take one step back. I see content in 4 different ways. You have text, you have pictures, you have audio, and you have video. So as a brand, however you're telling your story, however you're trying to promote yourself or market to new customers, listeners, whatever it is, you're trying to tell your story in those 4 different aspects. And you get all 4 of those in a very robust way through podcasting. And as just more companies, start to see that, as more people start to see that, um, I think advertising and podcasting is really just going to shoot more through the roof.
Mm. All right, all right. All right, so we are going to, well, before we start to wind things down, how does one get started in podcasting? So, where does one begin? Where does one start? What are the steps? What's the first step?
First step is to hit that red circle that says record, hit it, and just go. Just let it fly. From there, you can definitely get it better. I always suggest buying a USB mic. The Blue Yeti mic is probably the most popular one that everybody tends to have. So like the typical podcast mic, but that's one that we started with as well. But that one you just simply plug into your computer. You can open up a Zoom, you can open up Google Meets and record yourself from there, or you can take a step further. Invest in things like Zencaster, Riverside FM, official podcast recording platforms that you can do remotely. And that's just one way. Second way, I would say just call me. That's kind of the niche that we're trying to build out, is make this whole process simple for you. You have the idea, you have the message, you have the vision. Just kind of give it to us. We can digitize it, turn it into a podcast, and then kind of help you amplify it and make it nice and simple and smooth.
All right. All right, now we can start to wind things down. All right, so do you have any final words of wisdom that you would like to share with our audience?
Yeah. That's a good one. I guess I would just say, life is dope. That's our personal mantra. Obviously, we turned it into a business, but, the whole thing behind it is that the world is crazy, the news is scary, but at the end of the day, life is dope. And that's kind of something I remind myself every day, as you're just navigating through, the ups and downs of this thing called life. Just have some gratitude for what you've done. If you got the roof over your head, the clothes on your back, the food on your table, kind of remember life is dope, and you get another shot to go back out there and do it. And from that mind state, that's kind of been my thing, right? It's just constantly going back out, trying to make dope content, trying to tell dope stories, find dope people, just trying to make those connections to things that I consider are dope or positive. Don't oppress positive energy is what dope stands for us. But again, that's really what it's all about for us, is just trying to connect the positive energy that we see around us, remind ourselves that, I am in positive energy, and things will be all right.
Fabulous. Fabulous, fabulous. Well, Julius, thank you so much for coming on this show. This
Thank
was
you.
amazing. Okay, it's promo time. All right. So Julius is on the interwebs, you guys. He got two websites. So website one, he is on www.theplug-agency.com. And he has a second website, art19.com/network/the-plug. So check out both of those websites. He is also on LinkedIn. He got two Instagrams and he is on TikTok. So please follow him on all of his social media. Check out his two websites. If you
Hey.
are seeking, you got three websites.
No, I was just going to say the other website is for listening experience. So if you want to listen to our creators and the podcast I'm editing and distributing and helping monetize, go to the Plug Network. That'll get you there. And then if you need help creating a podcast or amplifying your voice, that's what the Plug Agency is for.
All right, there you have it. So if you're looking to start a podcast, but you need some help with it, you need to form an idea, you have it in your head, you don't know how to put it out there.
Yeah,
Um, that's always the challenge, right? You have an idea, but how do you implement that idea, right? So
exactly.
so that's where you come in, and you pull those details out and you structure everything, and you put it out there. So if that's something that you are looking for, Julius is your man. So please reach out to him. Website again, www.theplug-agency.com. And then the other one is art19.com/networks/the-plug. Is there any more that you want to share about your business?
I mean, sure, yeah, I'll take the opportunity. Yeah, like I said, podcast advertising is really going through the roof. So, a lot of brands are coming to the fact that they need to reach podcast listeners more so than the 12-year-old kid streaming YouTube or the 80-year-old grandma watching Facebook and looking at TV. They know that this certain audience converts higher from the ads that they hear. That's really what we're trying to help people or brands do with the plug is reach those podcast listeners in unique ways, host read ads, dynamic insertions. We have the full Marriott, but essentially we're trying to do that with Black podcasters. Right now, Black podcasts are only listened to about 13% of our population. So, we're really trying to echo that we need to listen podcasts, create more podcasts. And if you have a Black business, it's really beneficial to you to get on these Black podcasts and promote yourself as
All
I'm
right.
doing it.
Awesome. Of course. Of course. All right. So there you go. So if you are looking for those type of services, so reach out to Julius. All of this information, it is scrolling below at the bottom of your screen. If you just so happen to be watching this on video, but if you are listening to this on audio, whether it's Spotify or Apple or Spreaker, it is all in the description. So it is at your fingertips. If you missed it, don't worry. All of this is at your fingertips. All right. I want to make sure that we get this clip in. So in your media package, you had a bunch of clips from, I guess, your clients. And there's one of them that I wanted to play. It is called My Biggest Lesson with El Bruno. And it's an audio snippet. So I wanted to play that. I liked the message, and also it's part of your promo, right? So this is one of your clients that you work with in your company, and this is to highlight the work that you've done with her. And I also like the message as well. So I'm gonna play that clip right
Awesome.
now.
You never know unless you ask. And that carried with me like in many parts of my career. I remember my next job, this other person next to me got promoted and I didn't. And I went up to the manager. I said, I was really interested in that role. Why was I not up for it? And she said, you never reached out to me and said that you wanted the promotion. And that was a huge aha moment for me. I was like, again, you have to put yourself out there and ask for it, even though in your head, you're doing a great job. You should be the next person for it. If you don't put yourself out there and let that be known, it's going to be a challenge. And I've really felt that kind of stuck with me throughout my career, maybe not even just asking for a promotion, but I was at one of my startups, to remain nameless, where it was very male heavy and we didn't really have any female executives to look up to. And I went to my CEO and I said, could we put together an event for women in leadership? I'd really like to give this 250 female team, some people to look up to that are their same gender. And he said, yeah. So put it together. And so, we ended up putting together this quarterly series. So it's a super simple lesson, but it's you never know unless you ask.
All right. Boom. There you go. I like that message. And that's one of the people that you produce. All right. Well, Julius, thank you so much for coming on my show today. I appreciate your words that you shared with us.
Yeah. Thank you for having me so much. Thank you for letting me speak to your audience. And anytime you need me back, I'm just a phone call away.
All right. I'll hold you to that. All right. Thank you again. All right, you guys. So we have reached the ending of our episode. Let me get my contact information up here. All right. So thank you so much for joining us today. Please check out our other episodes, whatever platform that you are taking in my voice, whatever it is, whether it's video or audio. Please check out our other episodes and don't forget to follow and subscribe. And while you're at it, please let us know what you thought about this episode by leaving a comment in the comment section below or in the comment thread. And as a reminder, this podcast is a production of A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. So if you would like to learn more about us, the things that we have to offer, what we are all about, let me give you our website. Our website is www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. We are also on social media, you guys. We are all over the place. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, WhatsApp. I feel like I'm missing one, and Eventbrite. So check us out on all of our social media. And again, I'm just going to give that website one more time, www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. And while I'm at it, I encourage you to sign up for our email list and our texting list. You will receive exclusive offers, promotions, announcements. You will hear lots of great stuff when you join our texting list and or when you join our email list. I encourage you to sign up for both. That information is scrolling below at the bottom of your screen if you're watching this on video. But if you're listening to this on audio, that's okay. Just go to our description and the links are there. So make sure you sign up for our email list and our texting list. I encourage you to sign up for both of those things. And lastly, when you reach out to us, if you're looking for a tutor for yourself or for your child, you reach out to us and you say, hey, I heard about you from Hot Topics. We will give you 15% off 6 hours of tutoring. I'm going to repeat that again. If you are looking for a tutor, whether for yourself or for your child, your neighbor, your auntie, your cousin, your son, your daughter, your neighbor kid, your neighbor child, you reach out to us and you say, hey, I'm looking for a tutor. And you say, I heard about you from Hot Topics. We will give you 15% off 6 hours of tutoring. So take advantage of that opportunity, you guys. Don't let that slip away. All right. So I'm going to share this final message before we officially close out.
Hey there, have you heard of us? We're a small team of tutors here at A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. We believe that education and information should be accessible to everyone, regardless of income, race, or creed. We're dedicated to making this happen, but we need your help. Please consider making a donation to our company. No amount is too small. Your donation will allow us tutors to remain employed. Offer free and low-cost services, put on productions like this podcast, and reach out to families nationwide. With your help, we can tackle the academic challenges of our students and the emotional, mental, and behavioral changes that result from these challenges. As a bonus, we can improve our communities in the process. Support us today. Send your donation by Cash App to $ASATS2013, by PayPal or Venmo to @ASATS2013, or by Zelle to success@astepaheadtutoringservices.com. For our Facebook Live viewers, you can also send us a star. Your support means a lot to us. Please note, We're a for-profit company. We're not a charity. Your donation may not be tax deductible. Please consult a tax professional.
All right, you guys, and that is it for the episode today. Thank you so much for being with us. I look forward to seeing you or hearing you. Is that the verb? Whatever it is, I look forward to feeling your vibes, I guess, at the next episode. Thank you again for joining us. And now I am signing off. Bye.